Hi, I'm Doug McKenzie and welcome to FF News' The Paytech Show. Now, as a consumer, it can be easy to think of payments as a simple message between banks, consumers and businesses, especially when they're traveling at real time. The reality of the process is far more complex. Numerous players facilitate the movement of every single payment. And in such a regulated industry such as payments, every cog in this machine has to play its part and ensure not just the rapid delivery of funds, but that the correct amount is signed, sealed, delivered. Now, for businesses, both large and small, being able to receive payments in a frictionless and fast package is fundamental to their existence and even their successes, especially in an economic downturn where liquidity has never been more critical. So many organizations and people's livelihoods rely on payments being reconciled appropriately. The stakes have also never been higher for these organizations that facilitate payments. One incorrect manual process and a business could be without their lifeline for months, maybe even more. Now, we think the way to change that is going to be automation, 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 because banks and customers alike need their payment providers and their systems that enable payments to be better than just a spreadsheet. I'm starting to think that trust will become a key battleground in the payments industry as customer expectations grow into customer demands. Now, in today's episode, we talk with some of the biggest leaders in the payment space about the challenges and opportunities that financial institutions and payment organizations face when actioning these high volume payments. And one of the biggest challenges is going to be innovating now that real time has become far more of a common reality. First, we spoke with AutoRek's head of sales, Hugh Burden. Now, AutoRek provides financial institutions with an end-to-end reconciliation platform, and they do this for some of the largest firms in the global payment sector. So, to catch him on camera, the FF News team and I took the train up to Scotland. A short while later, we were taking in the beautiful Victorian architecture of Scotland's largest city, with AutoRek's stunning offices being based right in the heart of Glasgow. We also wanted to hear from a firm that typifies a best-in-class real-time payments provider. So we managed to bring in Somya Patnaik, the Principal Product Manager at ACI Worldwide, here in the FF studio in London. Now, ACI Worldwide are a global software company and they're committed to helping companies, corporations implement real-time payment solutions. And as a result, we were so excited to get Somya's perspective here, where she'll be sitting in the FF News studio hot seat. So without further ado, let's meet our guests. Hugh, how are you doing here today?
Doing very well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming up to us.
It's been an absolute pleasure, absolutely love it here in Glasgow, and we've really enjoyed ourselves seeing some of the lovely sights here. So Hugh, before we go any further, can you set the scene for us? Can you tell us a bit more about yourself, your role at AutoRek, and for our viewers who might not be aware, AutoRek themselves, please?
Yep, absolutely. Hugh Burden is my name. I head up the sales team here at AutoRek. I've been with them since 2015, so coming up towards 7 years with AutoRek, and for the majority of my career really I've worked right across the financial services spectrum, working with banks, insurance companies, investment managers and crucially payment companies now as well. And AutoRek services all those sectors because ultimately what we provide is an end-to-end financial data management system. And clearly, as the name suggests, we automate reconciliations. I think everybody expects that. But we do all sorts of great stuff with the data on the way in, automating the way data can flow into our system through APIs, open banking, and various other sources. Ultimately, we often say we can ingest any type of data from any source. So then we do the reconciliation, maybe some other accounting functionality. But then out the other side, we've got features and functionalities like automated postings. We've got workflow to manage all those breaks. And we do a significant amount of reporting, dashboarding, and a really crucial one, that kind of regulatory reporting as well.
So Somya, I've got to ask, could you give our viewers a bit of a background to yourself, your role at ACI, and really what you've been working on over there?
So my name is Somya Patnaik. I'm working as a Principal Product Manager for real-time payments at ACI Worldwide. So I work very closely with our customer-facing teams and other internal teams in driving the solution strategy for real-time payments. For those who are not aware about ACI, we are a payment software company headquartered in the US. We've been in the payment space for over 45 years now, supporting our customers who are banks, financial institutions, financial aggregators, merchants, corporates in delivering new payment services, new payment experiences, and basically maximizing the value they deliver to their end customers. So yeah, we are supporting our customers in their payment modernization journey.
Absolutely brilliant. And yeah, when you look at payments modernization, it's gone through so many innovations over the last couple of years. It's definitely been, to me, the biggest changing vertical in finance. So I'd love to hear your insights though, Somya. How have payments evolved over the last couple of years? What's been the biggest innovation that's caught your eye?
Like you said, payments is growing like never before, and we've seen some significant changes in the past few years. The pandemic definitely has accelerated so many changes which otherwise would have taken years. We've seen consumers move away from traditional payment modes like cash, even cards, bank transfers, to newer modes of payments like mobile-based real-time payments, QR codes, digital wallets. But I think besides the pandemic, I would say technological innovation was the key driver in bringing those innovative services that's ultimately, enhancing consumer experience for people like you and me. And the world, I would say, is more close-knit now with a lot of cross-border activities happening. There's a global adoption of ISO 20022, which has brought about significant changes in the payment landscape. We now also have access to richer payment data, which is being increasingly used to bring about personalized, differentiated payment experiences. That's also driving adoption. So a lot of things going on in the payment industry.
One thing that has changed when it comes to payment culture is the volume of payments that are now being transacted at real time. So how can institutions make sure that their reconciliation is tip-top, making sure that it's completely working as is, 24/7 at RTP? How can you do that with such high volume of payments?
It's interesting because the volume is continuing to grow, and it's going to grow significantly in the next 5 years. Okay, and the volume could be higher in some countries. For example, in India has done about 50 billion real-time payment transactions. They do 6 billion transactions per month.
Wow.
And we've seen countries like China who do probably 18 billion, 20 billion transactions per year. So yeah, and I see efficiency in payment reconciliation as definitely a big challenge because of the rising volumes. And apart from the volume, I see that banks and financial institutions have no choice but to offer multiple payment methods so as to give that diverse option to the consumers. That also increases the complexities around payment reconciliation. And there is a need for automated reconciliation platforms that would actually solve for this, not only the volume related complexities, but other operational inefficiencies that banks are facing today. So I would say, apart from reconciliation, the payment systems, the payment infrastructure, the payment solution needs to be scalable and agile enough to support the volume explosion that's coming up. And I think that's the reason why banks and financial institutions have begun their cloud modernization journey, and they're trying to benefit from cloud. For example, the clouds, deploying your solutions in cloud are more flexible, they are scalable, you're able to bring new services in the market quickly and also comply to the regulatory mandates. So we're going to see interesting things coming up in the next few years.
How critical is automation in a real-time payments environment?
Well, retail payments has just driven that volume piece up so high, and it does come back to that idea that how are merchants and merchant acquirers going to deal with such high volumes, and how they're going to reflect that in their customer experience. So in the absence of automation in something like real-time payments, organizations are faced with just building a fixed cost effectively, with recruiting more and more people to process those payments manually. And automation, if you select the right partner, there are very few downsides.
How do you guys look to help these payment companies deal with these changing payments times, this different payments culture that we're now facing?
Sure. So Most payment companies are actually technology companies by birth, right? And they've spent a huge amount of money on that kind of customer acquisition piece. And that's sometimes been at the expense of the back and middle office. And we still find large payment companies that are sort of really reliant on Excel, or indeed a kind of a self-built platform.
Wow.
So that certainly Excel presents a number of difficulties that we seek to resolve.
It's fascinating to think that, looking at digital and mobile payments and real-time payments as this gateway to effectively improving not just industries, commercial, and also entire countries' economies, but the consumer down at the very bottom. And I think that's just absolutely brilliant to know. You see that in countries like high-growth countries like Mexico and Brazil, that example being typified. Now, with all these innovations, and it's very easy to say that countries that grapple with real-time payments and payments at speed are afforded high growth, but there's also for the institutions a lot of operational challenges when payments are being slung about at those speeds. So when it comes to reconciliation as well and payments at real time, what are some of the challenges that maybe your organization could help alleviate?
I think one of the key challenge, I would say, is keeping up to the changing regulatory mandates.
Right.
Okay, so there needs to be an ongoing compliance to all these regulatory mandates that keep on coming. And regulatory mandates could actually be quite exhaustive for banks and financial institutions because they come every now and then. And banks and financial institutions need to comply to those regulatory mandates, which also includes operational aspects like reconciliation. There could be security enhancements, there could be new features that banks need to introduce. So I think regulatory mandates is something that's keeping the ecosystem on its toes, and there's a constant catch-up that is being seen in the ecosystem.
So what's the future of cross-border and real-time payments?
I feel that cross-border payments is definitely more complicated versus domestic payments, and there are several reasons for that. One of the main reasons could be data standards, because different countries follow different data standards, and some countries may have their own proprietary standards, which is very difficult for the other country to follow. And but I think with the global adoption of ISO 20022, we could see this challenge smoothen out a bit. And there are some inherent challenges with cross-border payments. They are slow-paced versus a domestic payment. Some transactions could take days to process, and as a sender, you won't have exact visibility of your payment status, which could be frustrating. It's also more expensive versus a domestic payment. As consumers and corporates, you tend to pay higher transaction fees, and even for banks and financial institutions, they tend to, it becomes expensive because they have to make funding in advance across multiple currencies to support cross-border. But in that, we have seen a definite demand for cross-border real-time payments. Okay, and we've seen a lot of cross-border activity happen using the domestic real-time payment rails that are in place today. I could give some examples, like the Asian Payment Network is trying to connect various domestic real-time payment schemes within Asia Pacific. So there are about 8-9 countries that they are trying to connect and create that cross-border interoperability. We are seeing the clearinghouse in the US do a pilot on cross-border interoperability with Europe. India has done cross-border interoperability with 4 countries, UK being the latest addition. So we're seeing a lot of cross-border activities between the major economies, and cross-border real-time payments hopefully will become a reality pretty soon.
So what are some of the challenges that these organizations may face when trying to reconcile their payments cross-border?
Sure, I mean, cross-border payments, really, really hot topic, and most organizations now are obviously looking to deploy their platforms globally, which means just by default, they're going to have to deal with cross-border complexities. I think there are 3 big ones. First of all, foreign exchange. And with foreign exchange comes 2 problems, basically. First of all, the fluctuations, which are difficult to manage. And second of all, the liquidity risk. How much cash are you going to hold of each currency and what's appropriate? The second major problem is dealing with regulations, and you might be already tooled up to deal with your domestic regulations, but clearly you mightn't have considered regulations in other jurisdictions. And then thirdly, again, you may have designed your systems and platforms to deal with your domestic situation, but you are going to get interfaced, and you're going to have to deal with interfaces from other jurisdictions, and you really need to consider the effect that'll have on your core platform.
That's all we've got time for on today's episode of the Paytech Show. I want to say a massive thank you to our guests, Somya and Hugh, for providing us with their insights. And also a big thank you to you, our viewers. You can catch the rest of the series and much more over at ffnews.com, of course YouTube, but especially LinkedIn, where you'll see me here in the comments. Thank you very much and goodbye.